Hello and welcome to day 9. Sorry, excuse me. Today we are going to paint a stocking. And I know there's a lot of different types of stockings out there, and we could go so many different ways with this. But in trying to keep it simple, we're just going to paint a basic red stocking with the white top. I'm going to leave it blank and let you fill it in however you would like. I'm going to do a very light, kind of rough sketch just so we have the shape. I do want it to kind of look like it's hanging on a hook of some sort. So we've got this little loop here. And then I'm going to hang it at an angle. There's our little white top. And then it's going to go down and kind of around. And we're going to go here. Okay. I looked up a photo that has a stocking. So if you want to do that so you have something to look at, it can be helpful, I think. Mainly for adding in, what's it called? Folds, sorry, folds and shadows. I'm getting a little distracted. So I'm going to draw a little line so I know where the folds are. It's going to be a little darker here. Bit of a line here. And I know some stockings have some color at the top or the front there. I'm not going to do that. We're just going to make it a very basic red and white. And then we're just going to add in the shadows, basically, is the main thing we're focusing on today. For this one, to try to keep it simple. Even something as simple as this could end up being a long process. And if we add too much other stuff to it, it's going to make it take even longer. Okay. So I think we're going to start with the red just to get it there. And actually, because we're filling in a slightly larger space, I'm going to go to a slightly larger brush. This is a Princeton round 4. It's much smaller than my smallest Polina Bright round. And so it's big enough that it's bigger than the liner. It'll be easier to fill in the space, but it's not too big because we don't really have a large space to fill in. We're just filling in this relatively small area. And I'm going to do all one color to start. And then I might drop in a few darker areas for like where our shadows are going to be. But I'm going to start right here under there. And I'm going to go ahead and just fill this in with a wash. Just trying to keep it the same basic color throughout. Getting a little more paint on my brush each time. Dabbing it on the paper towel so it's not too wet. And just filling in that space as much as possible. I do have some darker color here from before. I believe it's mixed with a little bit of the dark green. I can show you. Take some of my Perylene green, mix it in with the Cad red, and it does this kind of brownish red, which is a nice, just slightly darker color for shadow, because you don't need to necessarily do black or gray for a shadow. And I'm just plopping this in this area that I know is going to be pretty dark, and I'm just going to do some along the edge here. This is a fairly dark shadow. All along here, we're going to kind of spread that color out a bit because it is just a touch darker than the rest of the stocking. Rinse my brush, and I'm going to kind of pull some of that color to blend in with the rest of this. And there's actually another little shadow over here, another fold really. Wet my brush and pull that color kind of out here. And now for shadows and folds like this, we are eventually going to kind of want like a nice hard line there. But we're going to do that more when it dries. Sort of a wet on wet type of, a wet on dry technique. So for now, I'm just getting in some basic areas that I know are going to be a bit darker than others. And then the rest we're just going to leave for a bit. And we might even come over this because it's got really, really dark. I might come back over this with just the straight red just to give it a little more color, more of that bright red color. Unless you want a more muted look, which is, the color palette I typically am drawn to. So this red actually doesn't bother me, but it's not as traditionally bright red as most Christmas stuff typically is. Okay, well, while that's drying, we can do a little bit of the white, and because our paper is white, we're not going to really paint the section there. We're just going to paint in some light shadows. We're going to use a gray of some sort. I have a little bit here on my palette. This is a mix of some of the sepia with the I keep wanting to call this indigo, but I'm pretty sure this is my Sodalite genuine, which is Daniel Smith, and it's very similar to an indigo. It granulates more, which is a fun thing that we can get more into in a future video, if you're interested. But this is just the sepia and the Sodalite genuine kind of mixed, very light color, added a lot of water. I'm even going to add still a little bit more because we want this to still read like it's white with just hints of shadow. We don't want to throw in a big dark bunch of black or dark gray in there, or it won't look like it's a white top to our stocking. And then just like this one had more shadow on this side, we're going to add in some shadowy bits on this side. Just pulling them across. Try not to touch the red, it might still be wet. There's a bit of shadow up along the top here. You can draw it in and then pull some of that color down. There is one long shadow right through the middle here. And then just really light bits of shadow over on this edge too, but not a lot. And even if we want to make it appear very, very light, we can take some bleed-proof white and or pen later and add that in here as well. I am going to get a little bit darker gray to go right in between here where the little string kind of combines. And I'm just going to do a hint of color along the edges just so you can see where the string is. Not really string, the loop of the stocking there. It's not really a string, it's thicker than that, and there we go. So it kind of almost outliney, but not too much of an outline. We don't want to draw too much attention to it. And we'll soften that up. So it's got some gray in it. but it still looks light enough that it's like a cover. And actually, this white bit really should be coming out a little bit further from the stocking so that it looks like it's an extra layer on top of the red layer. Okay, and then that did get a little darker than I would like it to, but that is okay. We can take a little bit of water on a plain brush, dry it off quite well, and then we can just kind of tap over that and soften the color just a bit. We don't want to do too much. Okay, and then when we add some shadow under here, it's going to make that layer pop out a little bit more. I just want to make sure that this red bit is dry. It's still a little damp, so we're going to give it a little bit more time. But yeah, right now it doesn't really look like that white layer is sitting on top of the red. But when we add in our shadows, especially along that edge there, that should help. So give this a minute, let it dry completely before we add in our next layer. And then we'll come back and we'll move forward with a few more shadows. We'll let those dry, and then we'll do another layer of that red all over just to fix those colors a little bit. So I will be right back. Okay, we are back. Painting's pretty dry. So we are going to go ahead and mix in a slightly darker gray using some of that Sepia and that Sodalite. I'm going to need to add more to this. You can tell which colors I use a lot. I filled them all at the same time, but I have painted with a lot more of this. Okay, so that's a nice dark kind of gray. And I'm going to use some of this for my shadow. Just because we do need some of the shadows to be pretty dark. Like right under here, all along the edge here. Keep it thin. But then this part specifically is a nice dark shadow. And you want to kind of pull some of that color down. I'm going to take that brush that I had before, wet it, and kind of just pull some of that along. And it's going to go all the way to the edge here, and then it does have quite a bit of shadow here as well. All the way along and just brushing that out a little bit. Okay, and it's definitely brighter areas over here, and then it gets darker. We will touch that up some more here in a bit. But I do want to take a little bit of this gray and just kind of cover this area. And we're going to go along the toe. It's a bit darker there as well. There's one that comes across. All right, we're just going to blend those out just a bit because we don't want it to be so stark in comparison to the other. There's another dark shadow over here. Not as intense as that first one though, so I'm going to soften that a little bit. It went a little too dark. All right, sometimes it's helpful to put in these shadows first and then to come back later and add in some more color all over everything. And so that's kind of what we're doing. We're just getting the shadows in. And then we'll come back later after it's dried a bit more and we'll add in some more of the basic red color. Because the stocking got quite dark. All right, and I do think it is a little hard to kind of do these shadows and stuff when you can't see the reference photo, so I apologize for that. I need to perhaps find a way to share the photo that I'm using with you guys. I know when I'm painting, it's easier for me to see what the reference photo is. Following along blindly, as somebody else just says, let's do this and this and this. This doesn't always make sense. But let's give that a chance to dry, and then we'll do another layer of the nice bright red over top of all this, which should hopefully bring everything together a bit. So give it just a minute, pause your video, and then come back when yours is dry. Okay, I am back. My stocking is pretty dry, and we are just going to do a layer of the Cad Red Medium on top of the stocking. I want it to be a good bit of that red without too much of the shadow color mixed in, and you can see I added some over here. There was some of that other color underneath. I'm trying to tap my brush off a little bit. I don't want it to be too full, but I do want to add that color. So, and I am just going to take and paint over the whole thing. We want to do a full wash. And so I'm going to keep picking up that color and some water, and I'm just going to brush it over the top, which is going to leave our shadows there. It will soften them a bit. But it's going to add that color back in to bring it to more of that red color. And now we can let it dry. It'll dry a little soft. And if we decide we want another layer, we can put another layer on top of that as well. But it's already looking a little bit better with that red added on. And if we want to, we can also look and see if we need to add any more shadows to our white area. There is supposed to be a decent shadow in the middle of the stocking, and I think I kind of lost that a little bit. So I'm just adding a touch more, and I'm going to soften it. I don't want to touch that red because I don't want red mixed in with my stocking. You can also wait for your red to be completely dry before you touch up any of that if you would prefer. There we go. So now we're going to let this dry again completely, see if we like how the color looks. If we want to add another layer to our stocking, we can make it a little more red. Otherwise, we'll be just about finished. So go ahead and pause again, let your painting dry, or you can use a heat gun if you have one to speed up the process. I don't typically use those often, especially if I'm using masking fluid or anything like that where it might affect the paper. But for something simple like this, it shouldn't be a problem. I wouldn't recommend a blow dryer because the blow dryers use more force when they're drying. and it might move your paint around more, and or it might scorch your paper. Even the heated craft tool, you have to make sure you're constantly moving. You don't want to leave it in one spot the whole time, and so just something to be careful of if you're doing that. But you definitely can do that to speed up the drying process sometimes. Yeah. So give this a minute to dry, and then come back. We'll decide if we want to add another layer or if you just want to be done. Be right back. All right, we are back. My stocking is dry. I think this actually looks really, really good. I might add another layer and just avoid some areas to make it lighter even in those areas. So maybe just where the shadow is a bit, just to make it a little more red. So I'm going to take my, and you don't have to do, if you're happy with yours as is, feel free to ignore this step. It is your painting, and you get to decide how much of it you want to do and how much you don't. If you are happy with how your colors look as is, leave it, I would leave it be. I just wanted mine to be a touch more red, especially where the shadows are. It got a little dark for me. And I'm actually gonna blend some of this color out, wetting my brush and then just kind of pulling it over to meet over there. Okay. So, and there we have it. Now our stocking is finished. I think it looks pretty good overall. We've got some shadows. Looks like it's hanging. You could always hang these on, like paint them onto a fireplace, a mantle, a shelf. Duplicate them, change up the shadows just a bit. They wouldn't be exactly the same. There's a good photo on Unsplash that has just about 6 stockings. If you want, you can go through and add a name on the top of yours, or you can, or an initial, or just leave it blank. Maybe create a little stocking holder that has an initial. However you want to do it, but there you go, a nice simple stocking. I will see you guys tomorrow for day 11. Thanks. Bye, y'all.